Thank you guys for joining us for a special edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright presented by First Star Logistics. As I promised, this week I'm going to be sitting down with people in the Bengals community. I'm joined today by a guy that I respect a lot. I don't think there's too many people that do break down offensive linemen better than him. My guy Parker Blake. Appreciate you, my man. We've been talking about doing this for quite some time, and I'm happy that we're finally able to make it happen.
Yeah, man, you can't hype me up too much. You got to keep that bar a little low. I can't let people down out here. I appreciate the kind words and I appreciate the opportunity, brother.
Hey man, I speak nothing but truth, man. I believe it's good to give people their flowers, man. And I admire what you've been doing from afar, man, and the consistency in which you do it as well, man. And we've been talking on Twitter for quite some time as well. So, pretty much the gist of this is, like I said, I respect the hell out of what Parker does when it comes to offensive line and whatnot. So I want to hear from him. I want to know who his top 3 offensive line fits are for the Bengals, and who are some of his not so top fit for the Cincinnati Bengals. So, Parker, I don't know if you want to start with the bad first, or do you want to start with the good?
I'm sure we can work back and forth, but I got to start with a guy that popped up in the news recently that I think is a fit. I don't think people would be excited about it, but I think long term could actually pan out really well. And there's 2 guys that I kind of have similar, but I'll start with Patrick Paul. Big body, they have the Orlando Brown, they got the Trent Brown. And now bringing in a guy that, again, might not have the best athletic profile, might not have the best footwork in the game, but has that dog mentality, has that finisher's mentality, just hates defensive football players, and has the upper body strength, has a great anchor, and just loves mauling defenders. I think he's a guy I would love to see kind of get in, working as a swing tackle early, and then kind of maybe be a spot starter if need be, but then work into that starting role. I think he could do it. I think he'd do it at a high level for a long time.
Why do you think there's so many people that are low on Patrick Paul? I see there's a lot of there's like this weird discourse about him, like where people are like, "Oh, this would be a nightmare pick for the Bengals." Why do you think that is? What are some things in his game that I guess you maybe look at and you say maybe needs to be a little bit more refined?
Yeah, no, I think, and he's in that kind of group that's in that weird top 40 spot, but maybe not a first rounder type guy in people's eyes. And I think a lot of it comes from, I don't think he's well developed as far as, the real technical side of things. I think he's kind of got crazy hand placement every now and then. I know his footwork and his pass set is hard to watch. And like I talked about, he has a very limited athletic profile on film. I know he moved around pretty well during all the testing stuff in the, during the draft cycle. And I think he can get there, but I do worry that he has flexibility issues. I think, the things that kill me the most with his game, he plays a bit tall, and then he's kind of got the Orlando Brown Jr.-esque footwork in his pass set where he's not necessarily kick sliding. He's kind of just shuffling and staying in front of guys. But I do think he can kind of counter that. He has really good length. He's got great arm length, got great upper body strength, good grip strength. It can redirect well. And again, he's got that motor where he doesn't really give up on plays. He's not like getting beat early and watching it happen. He's always trying to recover. And I think, once you get thrown into the fire that is the NFL, you're always going to fall back on your recovery ability. And I think he has it.
100%. Let's hammer out another good one that you like for the Cincinnati Bengals, an ideal fit.
For sure, yeah. And like I said, I had 2 guys that I have kind of similar, and they're both tackles, and I wanted to kind of spread across the positions, but I do want to do honorable mention Tyler Guyton for a lot of the same reasons that I like Patrick Paul. I like Tyler Guyton as a fit, big frame guy. I think it'd do a lot, with the mentorship of Orlando Brown and Trent Brown, and just kind of get into the system. I think it'd be a good fit for what they're trying to do, but I also think he brings a little bit more athleticism with the same size profile and competitive profile that they kind of already have and they like in the building. And I just feel like he'd be a good fit. And it's kind of like the better version of Patrick Paul for me. He doesn't have experience, a lot of experience playing at Oklahoma. A lot of good tackles come through there. Only had 1 year really starting down there. And then they're also a scheme that protects your tackles a little bit. But I think he's got it together. And I know people talk about him being really raw, but I think he's a lot more developed than people give him credit for. And I think, again, kind of the opposite of Latham, with his athletic ability and his balance that he plays with, I think he can develop more and quicker and kind of sustain that for a longer period of time. And that's a guy I really liked as a fit for the Bengals. And those are both guys that are hard to pick at 18, but guys that I think, back into the first, if you want to trade back or if you want to move up in the second, I think those are great guys that you can try and go get.
Man, I feel like Tyler Guyton is a guy that isn't being talked about enough, honestly speaking. So to hear you talk about him, man, is music to my ears. Who's another ideal fit that you see for the Bengals that you like?
Another guy that I feel like no one's given enough credit to or talking to about just in general with the whole draft process is Graham Barton.
Graham
And
Barton.
his positional flexibility. I don't understand why he's not getting talked about a lot, because
The
again,
school. The school.
yeah, it's a Duke thing, I'm sure, but it hurts my feelings that I'm a Kentucky guy. I can't root for Duke in anything that they do, but man, they've turned out some good prospects. And again, Barton and he's got true 5-position flexibility. I feel like people talk about a lot of these guys like, oh, he can play tackle guard, or he's got 4-position flexibility. And I don't think it's as easy as people make it seem.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's been that whole conversation with Fawu Tanu out of Washington, like, oh, well, he can even play center maybe. But Graham Barton has the experience at the college level in a Power 5 conference, playing multiple different positions and doing it well at each position. And again, he could be a spot starter at tackle. He could compete for a guard spot. He can even fill in for the center role if you need it. And I feel like that's really what the Bengals need. If they're not able to get one of these top tackles that they like or that I think fit well, I think it should be Barton, because he can come in and automatically increase, the level of play in your room, increase that floor. Because the O-line is not about a ceiling. It's not about the ceiling of the room. It's about the floor. Because you got 5 guys out there that got to work together. You got to get the 5 guys out there that can do the best that hopefully you can put on the field. And I feel like when you get a guy like him that can come in and push multiple guys, to improve or lose their job, and then he can fill in if any of those guys happen to go down at any spot, I feel like he's a guy that can be really fun to just get into the room, get into the building, and just say, hey, find a spot where you land, but be ready to go. I feel like that's the 6th guy you can count on from day one.
Yes, sir. It's funny that you say that. Daniel, obviously, my co-host on State of the Jungle, he's brought up Graham Barton a lot to me, and he was the first person to make me aware of him. And he even, I guess, he was like kind of fighting for us to draft in that one State of the Jungle episode. So
Yep.
it's funny that you bring him up because he's right here in the room with me. He smiled as soon as you said Graham Barton. But now, who is another prospect that you maybe don't love so much for the Bengals? Fit-wise.
I wanted to bring up JC Latham, but I feel like you've already talked enough to that point. I gotta come up with something original. I gotta.
No, I want to hear though. I want you to break out, because I'm coming about it, because I watch a lot of Alabama film. Obviously, being an Alabama Crimson Tide fan, Roll Tide, and I try to tell Bengals fan there's not a lot. He does struggle with consistency there, and I think that I think if Bengals fans pulled their hair out with Jonah, I think they'd pull their hair out equally with JC Latham. When I turn on JC Latham's tape, I don't see what everybody else is kind of seeing, if you ask me. But maybe you actually can go into that. I do want to hear what your thoughts are on JC Latham, is why you may not think that he is an ideal fit for the Bengals.
Yeah, and as a guy that's watched Alabama film, maybe you can appreciate this comp more than I feel like other people are. And it's not just a helmet scouting comp, but I just see a lot of Alex Leatherwood in his game. I see limited lateral mobility. I see he wants to just grab guys and hang on for the ride, and I see him getting to the next level. I'm sure he'll start out as a tackle. Teams are going to want to put that big body, that anchor, out on the perimeter. But as he starts working through camps and getting live reps, he's going to end up getting bumped inside, and that's where his best ceiling is, I think. But I just see him taking that same path as Leatherwood, and I just can't get that evaluation back in the day out of my mind yet. So I keep seeing him as a guard. I worry about the hands. I worry about the holding. I worry about the concrete feet. And that's just the comp that I keep coming back to with him.
Hey man, listen, Alex Leatherwood is the perfect comp. I mean, like literally, I feel like that comp has kind of been on the tip of my tongue for a while, but I never put 2 and 2 together. Like, man, he's Alex Leatherwood, because you always try to look to compare him to somebody that's already in the league or somebody that maybe that didn't go to the same exact school as him. But Alex Leatherwood is literally the perfect comp for JC Latham, and we know how he has kind of turned out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I kind of agree. Why do you think people are so in love with him? I don't know if it's the school. I don't know if it's the fact that he's done it, at a high level, I guess, in college football. Like, what do you think people are so in love with that we're not seeing?
Well, it's got the perfect mixture of a prospect that you should love on paper. Like, he's got the length, he's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the strength, he's got the he wears the crimson, he plays in the SEC,
Yeah,
he's got the experience. Like, he's just got all these things that should turn into a good player. Like you want to be excited for, but I just don't think. Again, it's the bad footwork, the bad recovery ability, the bad redirection ability, and then just he's so willing to just lean on, hey, I'm a strong guy, I have good grip strength, I can just grab guys and lock them up, that he hasn't really developed these other phases of his game. And I just feel like that's just something that O-line wise across the board, no one's really analyzing at a high level. And so they're just like, oh, big, strong guy, played in the SEC, let's throw him at tackle. And they're not really looking at, oh, what's he doing? What's he doing with his feet? Can he even move his feet well? Is he just grabbing on guys or is he punching guys? And that's just, again, it's all the development of his game that I just don't see the ceiling being there at all in the league.
I hear you, my man. Who's another guy that you may think is not an ideal fit for the Bengals?
Yeah, I wanted to go interior. I feel like there's a lot of these interior guys, and people keep hyping up this class. And I do feel like there's a couple guys that need to get mentioned that just people are just excited about for no reason. And one that's really interesting to me is Jackson Powers Johnson. He's a really big framed guy, solid center. You get a lot of undersized centers nowadays. And I think he's got a lot of the stuff, again, people are looking for, but they're not really looking at that scheme fit or at how that translates. And I just talk about, the Oregon offense. I talk about the Oklahoma offense and how they protect their tackles. I worry about Jackson Powers Johnson getting to the league and into the Bengals system where they do a lot of, straight traditional drop back. They do a lot of that gap scheme stuff. And it's kind of old school style football compared to what a lot of these more modern teams are doing now.
Right.
And I think he's more accustomed to that, lots of screens, whether it's, quick screens where they can release or it's middle of the field screens where he's getting onto the second level or it's, just quick blocking, one step pass protection. And he's not ever really been asked at the college level to play that game of, hey, can I sustain a block? Hey, can I sort through stunts? Hey, can I, kind of check all these boxes out? And I know people have seen the great clips of him getting out on corners, but I do worry about his ability to climb to the second level in the run game. I didn't see him do that a lot successfully at Oregon. But again, he didn't really need to because it's quick hitting outside stuff.
Right.
He was kind of getting the bare minimum handled, which, again, there's nothing wrong with. And I think he has a good profile. Like, again, great size. But then I went down to the Senior Bowl, and I was really hoping to see him, these one-on-ones, like, hey, show me that you can actually sustain pass blocks and you can anchor down and you can handle some of this stuff. And I saw a lot of clips come out that I wasn't impressed by, and people seem to really hype up. But I worry about his anchor. I don't think he anchors well. I think he gives up too much ground, especially for being a center. You don't really have a lot to give in the middle. And so it's just a lot of these things with his profile. I think he'd be a great fit for other teams. I can see the first round value, but as far as the Bengals go, he just doesn't match at all what they do. And I worry about him kind of learning the system and fitting into the system. And I feel like that's one that people love, but it's worth talking about.
I turned on his tape and I was so hesitant to put out my opinion on it. You may have seen me put out a tweet regarding him, and people were ripping me like, man, you don't know what you're talking. But when I turned on JPJ's tape, the first thing I noticed is he comes right out the gate and tries to bully you. And if he doesn't, he falls over his own feet. He's not able to sustain, not able to truly be an anchor on the offensive line, especially the interior of it. And I'm just like, does anybody else see what I'm seeing? Like, I see holes in his game, and where you're not going to just be able to bully these guys in the National Football League. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of technique necessarily with Jackson Powers Johnson. And it feels like if he isn't able to win on the initial impact, I guess he struggles a bit. And that's the first thing that's stood out to me as like a sore thumb. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if like I'm as high on him as a lot of other people are, because if you turn on his tape, you see it consistently. It's, comes out the gate, tries to bully, the opposing defensive lineman. If it doesn't work, he's either falling over himself. And there've been times where I saw him even struggle to recover at times. So like, he's great on help, I would say. But I think that I hope I'm using the right terminology. I feel like such elementary speaking with you, Parker. But like, I do feel like when I turned on the tape of JPJ, there was some concerns I have from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head, right? Like, and again, I think it stems from that Oregon offense and how they do things. And again, he's a local kid to here. He just played just on the east side, and I'm very familiar with the school he played at. They got a lot of good prospects just locally. And so I turned on the tape. I wanted to root for him. I was like, hey, it's a local guy. We don't really get a lot of guys making it that deep. So I'm like, let's just root for this guy. I turned on the film, and I was like, oh, man, I don't want to bag on you. And then so I had some of his family members reach out to me, and I'm like, I got to be careful what I post. I didn't post about him for a long time. And I was just, I saw these tweets start popping up, and I was like, man, people are getting really hyped on him. And I think he's just a very specific type of prospect. But you're right. He's really the quick hitting type offense. Like, I think Miami should love him, but I just don't see him fitting well with what Cincinnati's trying to do.
That's actually a great fit because of their offense and how quick, they get the ball out. Tua is drop back, 1, 2, 3, boom, toss to his guy really, really quick, and let the receivers, get the yak yardage, if you will. I think that's a great fit. Who is the last, I guess, ideal fit that you see for the Bengals that maybe a lot of people are talking about that you just don't you're not sold on?
This one I've already caught a lot of flack for, and I've been low on through the entire cycle, not just like as a Bengals fit, but just kind of his profile in general. But I've been low on Olu Fashanu or Fashanu, I think is how you're supposed to say it,
Yes. Yes.
out of Penn State. It's not just the tiny hands thing. It's not just because I do only see him as a left tackle, but it's not even that part of it. It's just overall, I don't like what he brings to the run game. I know it's been a big thing that people have talked about with his game, but it's also I don't think he adapts well. And that's the one thing, when I first started watching this class and I was like, oh, watch Joe Alt, watch Olu, and like see who you have as the one and then work from there. And watch that Ohio State game, which they both struggled in early on. Watching Joe Alt go through, have his struggles in the first half and then come out in the second half and adjust, be able to, counter the moves that he was losing to in the first half and then carry that through in the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looked pretty locked down in the back half of that game. Whereas Olu, I feel like had the same struggles first to fourth quarter, and then those same issues pop up across multiple games that he's put out there on film. And I just worry about his ability to stick on blocks. He falls off blocks super early and often. He doesn't really force guys to run the hoop. He allows them to get into his chest. I feel like he has a lot of confidence in his anchor, which is good. It's a solid anchor, but he's able to get out leverage really easily. And at the college level, when you're a more developed guy, and I think he's a very technically developed guy, especially in pass protection, that's just not going to fly at the NFL level. In college, you can kind of stand some of these guys up, or you can just beat them with better technique and work it into the rep. But at the NFL level, these guys are going 100 miles an hour the whole time, and you're just not going to be able to kind of toy with them like that. And so those are the two things. It was really just, the falling off blocks, not really adapting and just kind of sticking to what he does and what he feels he does well and not adjusting to his opponent. And then just kind of overall his motor and his mentality. It's like the opposite of Patrick Paul, where he's kind of just looking to do his job and get to the next play. He's not looking to punish these guys play after play. And that's just something that's really big for me in my process, because mentality is something that you never have to worry about translating. If a guy's got a 10 out of 10 motor in college, he's going to have a 10 out of 10 motor in the NFL 9 times out of 10. So
100%. You and Daniel need to really sit down at some point and have a conversation, because literally the same prospects he's pointing out, same prospects you're pointing out. He literally would not get out of my ear one night and kept saying, hey, let me show you Olu. Let me show you Olu. Let me talk to you about this guy everybody's hyping up. And we turned on the tape, and it was just the best way I could say it was disgusting. His tape was nasty and not in a good way. This is a guy that I think that is being completely overhyped, overblown. And I did see issues at times, especially the Ohio State game. That's actually the game we watched where he was just absolutely manhandled out there time and time again. He does have issues, man. And I think that with drafting Olu, you're banking on potential. You're banking on him being able to reach his ceiling. And I'm just not quite sure if the league's in a spot where it's going to allow you to necessarily grow and take your time to really become the player that they hope you do become with spending a premium pick on him. And I just don't see it with Olu, to be honest with you. I guess honorable mention I want to ask you, just a quick question, just to fire this off really quickly. What's your opinion on Zach Frazier?
Zach Frazier's my guy, and I was so upset that I couldn't find a way to fit him into this, so I'm so glad you asked. But that's a guy I love. I have loved since day one. Zach Frazier's a guy I hope I get on my shadow team. I'm going to root for no matter where he lands in the league. I just love his game. He's everything I wanted to be when I was playing center, so it was always fun to go back and watch his tape. It was funny the other night I couldn't sleep, and this is just how much of a degenerate I am, I guess. But I just went and started watching West Virginia tape, just put it on my TV. It just was like watching Zach Frazier, because he's just so fun to watch. Him and Patrick Paul are like my best watch of the cycle. I think those two guys are just a blast. But Zach Frazier, again, has some technical deficiencies, isn't the best size, doesn't have the size of a guy like Jackson Powers Johnson, but it doesn't matter because he just comes off the ball, punch you in the mouth. Yeah, just a monster.
The other guy, last guy I want to ask you about before I ask you who you want the Bengals to take first in the 18th overall. I got to ask you about, I guess it's two guys. Daniel's guy, Tanner Bortolini. What's your opinion on him?
I like Bortolini. I wasn't familiar with his game, and then when I went down to the Senior Bowl, I kind of pulled up their rosters, and I was like, hey, who do I need to watch before I get out there on the practice field? And so I can at least have an idea of who they are before I see them live. And I was like, I haven't watched this Wisconsin guy. I love Wisconsin. I've always been a Wisconsin fan, just kind of like, rooting for football across the nation. It's O-line U back in the day, so I've always had a soft spot. I was like, got to go watch Bortolini at the Tortellini, man. And he came out, and he moves really well. Again, a smaller guy, you can tell he has arm length issues, but I think he does a great job of maintaining his base, staying in front of guys. He's one of those centers that's going to be a great guy at the league for a team in transition. He's not going to be an all-pro center. He's not going to be, a starter for, a majority of teams. But when he gets out there, he's going to be able to direct traffic. He's going to be able to keep the O-line, in line, keep them on target, on goal, and just, direct traffic.
Is it fair to say his ceiling is like a Ted Karras?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Or I'd even say, you could talk about Andrews or the Patriots still, because again, not a top level guy, but he can sort well, he can process well, he can ID stuff, really early, and he makes the game look easy. He has a decent anchor, all right run strength, but again, he does all like the mental things well, and that's what you need out of a center. You know what you're going to get out of him, and it's not going to be an all-pro product, but it's a guy like, again, where he's going to fall in the draft, I'd love to grab him.
And I guess the last guy I'm going to ask you about before I let you get out of here, before I ask you about the first pick for the Bengals, Cooper Beebe. Tell me about him. Do you like him? Do you love him? What is your opinion on him?
I've had a fun journey with Cooper Beebe because I had a buddy try to put me onto him last year because they thought he was going to come out last year, and so we actually did a couple film rooms like over Zoom, and we're watching guys together, and he was like, "Oh, just trust me. You're going to love this guy. You're going to love this guy. He's this crazy athlete. He's got this and that." I was like, "Okay. I mean, you're really hyping him up. Let's turn it on." And then I guess he had a bum ankle in the first game we watched. I was like, "I'm not seeing any athleticism out of this kid." He's like, "Oh, just trust me. It was a bad game." So we watched 2 or 3 games of him, and I was just like, limited athlete, doesn't really look eager to move out into space. And I was like, I don't really love this guy. Kind of a mid-round guy, maybe even a day 3 guy. And then he ended up going back to school. So I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens next year. And then I came out this year, and first couple of games I watched, I was like, same thing. He's consistent. Like, you know what you're getting out of him, but he just doesn't have that ceiling. He's a high floor, low ceiling type guy. And I was like, okay. But then I started getting into the games, started watching him throughout the season. And I was like, he does all of, just like Bordelin, does all of the little things well, but he does it from a technical perspective. Really great anchor. You can't really bully him at all. If you run into him, he's going to stop you. He does a great job of staying square. I've been talking about all cycle this year. I want to see him snap because I love his potential as a center in the league because, again, he shows that processing ability. He does a great job, like I said, of staying square and being able to move laterally without opening his hips and giving, free rush lanes. He can move from combo to second level really well. Even when he gets out in space, doesn't look like a great athlete on tape, but even though he tested really well. So I'm interested to see if someone can break open that potential. I want to see the athletic version of Cooper Beebe still. But even getting out in space, he's able to track, even these skilled players, DBs, linebackers. He's able to track them really well, win the leverage battle, and just get him out of the way. He just makes everything look so easy. He's not an exciting watch, but, if you're watching in the frame of, what does this guy do? Where is he going to be on my board? And just seeing like, oh, he checks that box. He checks that box. He's not exciting, but man, he's a damn good football player. And he's going to be a really good football player.
And before I let you out of here, and make sure you guys follow my guy Parker on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. Parker has great analysis when it comes to the offensive line. I can't wait to hear what his opinion is on some of these draft picks. Before I let you go, Parker, really quick, who do you want the Bengals to pick?
It's Johnny Newton, hopefully. Johnny Newton's going to be there. Go get Johnny Newton. That's it.
That mic drop. Go get Johnny Newton. Parker, I appreciate you so much for joining me on a special edition of not State of the Jungle, the Sit Down Malik Wright. I do too many of these shows. But my man, I'm a busy guy, but man, I always got time for you, brother. I appreciate you for making the time, and I'm happy we're finally able to make this happen. Make sure you guys give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate you, Parker.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, brother.
Of course, man.